Okay, I think we're live. And James just came right in a few seconds ago, and I was here maybe a few seconds before that. So who knows? I'm going to look and make sure that it gets up onto YouTube and that we've actually succeeded, even though I don't know. I think lawyers are supposed to be just expert procrastinators. Is that correct, Jim?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
That's really what the third year of law school is all about, learning how to effectively procrastinate.
Okay.
Sorry, oops.
So, so I was saying, like, do I really need makeup today? And I don't know.
You look
I,
great. You don't
well,
need a
okay.
bit
Well,
of makeup.
I have a little bit. I was there was a YouTube video on the other day, and this guy was talking about his wife spent an hour doing makeup, and I just
Whoa,
never had that kind of patience. But I
no.
guess because his wife did spend that kind of time, he was under the impression that that was normal. And for me, I'm like, can I have 5 minutes, to
Right, right, right.
to put on a little bit of makeup? Maybe 10, maybe 10. Yeah.
Well, my wife has been known to take maybe 10 or 15. Yeah.
Yeah. And your wife is, I mean, I think I would say she's usually way more put together than I am.
Oh,
So
no.
that extra 5 minutes
It's
could
rather
make a big
more
difference.
put
Maybe
together.
I should stop procrastinating and allot a little bit more time for things like makeup. So how are
Fabulous.
how are you?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing okay. I've just had this bizarre, you had your health stuff and I'm having my health issues.
Right.
And I think that mine are largely allergy based, believe it or not. And that sometimes, as a complication of allergies, you can get, say, like a sinus infection or an ear infection. And particularly with an ear infection, if you're checking your temperature with an ear thermometer to see how you're doing, it's going to look a bit hot, right?
Right. A little
So
worse
I,
than
yeah, so I ended up worried. And then, so I go to one of these urgent care places because I figure I'd taken some antibiotics, but then my symptoms were coming back and what's going on. And so I go there and then they, test me and they do like, chest x-ray and I'm clear. But then they do an EKG and they say, you have an abnormal EKG. So that is not a calming thing
no.
to be
No.
told.
But most abnormal, if it's just abnormal EKGs, I'm no cardiologist, but
Yes.
I have had contact with cardiologists.
I've seen one since. Yes.
Yeah, and most of the time it's it's within normal parameters. It's just maybe
Yeah.
the fact that you were ill or something.
Well,
Um,
and that's the thing. So when they tell you the abnormal EKG, and also, actually when they did the chest X-ray, but before they did the chest X-ray, they listened to my lungs, and she says, "I think I hear something on the left side." So I'm just, so it was a little bit comical looking back on it, but it was very stressful at the time. So
right.
so now I'm
Well,
just,
are they going to do more of a test? Are they going to like
yeah, so I'm
or
doing a full cardiac workup, but I already
right?
went for the initial visit to the cardiologist, and I mean I've got 170 something cholesterol, even though I put butter in my coffee, and just like all of my risk factors are so low,
Right.
so it's just,
You don't consume a lot of sugar, and you get regular exercise,
I
so your
consume
heart should
some
be in
sugar, but I don't go crazy, but I do
right.
consume some sugar. I'm one of these people, live and have a little bit of fun, but don't go crazy. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Well, what would be the point of living? You can have any sugar.
yeah, there and a lot of convenience foods are going to have some sugar content, and a lot of tasty foods are going to have some. So yeah, no, my diet in a nutshell. Oh, first of all, I have no diet. But any kind of diet advice that I try to follow is just waiting to load in carbs until later in the day if I can, and eat more vegetables. If I could do those two things, I'm just kind of happy with myself.
It was a really cute joke I saw on the internet today. It's the person was asking hypothetically, what is the function of carbohydrates in class? They were asking in the biology class, what's
Right.
the function of carbohydrates? And the person said, I guess that filling the sad hole in my heart was not the correct answer.
I swear though, it's like, if you let that blood sugar go low,
Yeah,
that is just not good for your mental state either. So there's this whole,
right.
I think that Barry Sears, the zone guy, had something going with him where it's, get this balance, and it's mostly about maintaining blood sugar.
Right.
So anyway, enough diet, enough health. Come on, let's get off. I want to talk about some real stuff because, as I said, there's just so much that we can talk about today.
There is. What a day.
Yeah, that's of importance. So people, if they want to check out my kind of skeletal program notes that I've put together, you go to don'tletitgo.com, and you'll see some program notes. I have them up. I am purposefully staying off of social media because I'm finding that some of the debates on social media are just kind of stressing me out too much. I get in them, I can't resist. And then I find it's like, okay, where's my blood pressure? So, but when we are going to talk about some of those today, but I'm counting on you, Jim, again, it's like, save me, dude. I want to talk about these tough topics, but then like give you some of the heavy lifting so I could just go,
I'm strong. I can do the lifting.
Can we do it? I mean, you and I will trade off, right? Because sometimes I think you need me to do the heavy lifting, sometimes you. And I think, we'll just kind of have this symbiotic relationship like that. So
good word.
Yeah, we will figure it out. So the first topic I've got on the agenda is Hong Kong, unless you want to talk about Bolton first. What do you think? Flip a coin?
Flip a coin. Yeah, because both are headlines. So
I've got Hong Kong in the program notes. So let's talk I don't want to do we want to talk with Carrie Lam?
No.
Okay, so we'll go for the preposition about. We'll go for the preposition about right now.
Yes.
Carrie Lam has issued a statement that is warning other countries not to interfere in the internal matters in Hong Kong. Does this sound familiar at all to you? This sort of thing, don't interfere with our personal affairs.
Right, especially when it's a dictatorship. When she's been appointed by China, the allegedly communist Chinese, certainly fascist Chinese, since they're her employer. Of course, she doesn't want anyone but that foreign power to be involved. And even though millions of people are taking to the streets of Hong Kong, apparently even people from the mainland China are sneaking into Hong Kong to join the protest, which really makes it an imperative issue for China. But of course, she doesn't want any foreign intervention. That's what the people of Hong Kong most want. They marched to the American consulate there asking for help. So when you've got, a million Hong Kongers actually asking for American help, and then she takes to the airwaves to say no.
Not even American help, Trump's help. Sorry, I actually make a bifurcation. There's American help, and then there's Trump help, which is sort of a unique American type of help if you're ever going to get it. So, but this is the thing. So Carrie Lam is saying, hey, don't interfere. But it's not like he's actually trying to interfere. I mean, as far as I know, his whole focus is on electing some guy from North Carolina so that he can have a Republican majority to do Lord knows what.
More important, yeah.
He was tweeting not at all about Hong Kong. I mean, imagine, you would think that somebody like him, and I'm not going to give him his psychological label that a lot of people do, and I think it's probably warranted, but I'm not a psychologist.
Neither am I. I won't go there either.
He's out there. We just did sort of, but he's they're all out there and they're calling for him by name. It's like,
right.
I mean, that must make him feel important. You think he would at least respond in some way.
They have tickled his ego there, haven't they? They seem to think that he's better than we seem to think he is. But they're also asking for American help in holding those American flags, and Trump really is the representative for America. And I think like we were saying before, it's be the America they think we are. And unfortunately, Trump is not a tremendous believer in freedom and rights, and nor is he likely to go out of his way to help Hong Kong. He's called them rioters. His set of values is clearly different. So I hate to break it to the good people of Hong Kong, but Trump is really not their ally, I don't think, at all.
Yeah. Now, there's also this appeal to Congress because there is a bill, they're calling it the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act of 2019. And, one of the questions we want to talk about, right? So what would help from Trump or from Congress legitimately consist of. There's one statement from Carrie Lam, or one part of her statement that I was focusing on when I read the story. I've got a CNN version of the story up right now on the computer. Carrie Lam said that some 1,400 US companies in Hong Kong currently benefit from Washington's relationship with the city. Right?
That's believable.
So she's saying that out of her own mouth.
Right.
I don't know that that is the wisest thing to say, because one of the questions that I've had in my mind in terms of, how much could you actually justify intervening over there? Suppose you think, okay, they're going to have, these are brave people. I am inspired. I'm so in awe of
excuse me, yeah,
courageous people. What if they decided to do a 1776 style revolution over there against all odds and everything else, because China's, this huge. And of course, in 1776, we weren't completely alone. We had some foreign
That's
help,
right.
Right.
Absolutely essential that we get help from France and Spain. The American Revolution would not have succeeded without foreign help, especially that of France. I think that's well-known history, right?
A question in my mind is, to what extent is there an American interest in intervening there? Because again, I've talked about this before. I see Hong Kong as this beacon of freedom, of capitalism, of individualism, and the idea that you're going to just let China steamroll over it.
Well, remember the context of 1776. It was a disaster for France to help America, wasn't it? It kind of helped lead to the French Revolution, which, right? So we don't want it to be a disaster for us, and we don't have any obligation to sacrifice our interests.
Okay. So, but how would it be a disaster for us, analogous to France? Because well, if we're going to help them get that kind of liberty, we want it too. What would it be here?
Well, that's a very interesting point. What if we're fighting for Hong Kong's liberties? What would the effect on our domestic politics be? That's a really good question.
There are some contradictions already running around, right? So when Nancy Pelosi, and I saw some quotation from Nancy Pelosi, I'm sorry I don't have in the program notes if I was due diligent, non-procrastinator, but my plate is just so full right now with all this health crap. So anyway, there's a quotation out there from Nancy Pelosi where she is extolling the fight for freedom of the Hong Kongers, and she's sounding better than Trump. What in the world? That is such a version, right?
Right.
So
right.
There are some contradictions rolling around there. The left is maybe as a knee-jerk reaction, because Trump isn't doing anything about this. They're taking the side of the Hong Kongers, but do they know what they're doing?
Well, the fact is that Trump has put them in a little bit of a difficult position, because he basically agrees with a lot of what would have been traditional Democrat foreign policy. For example, for whether he canned him or whether Bolton quit, Bolton has left. And Bolton would have been a much more aggressive interventionist, clearly. The Democrats are cheering Bolton's departure, but how do you do that and not have some cognitive dissonance? You really got to take this. Maybe they're taking this stand on Hong Kong, for example, and they'll probably select other issues like this simply because it's different from what Trump is saying, to be anti-Trump. And that may be the best thing that's happened to the Democrats in a long time, is Trump kind of pushing them in that direction.
Right.
But, they've got to be happy that Bolton's gone, happy with respect to Iran policy and North Korea policy that Bolton's gone, right? Because Bolton was so much better than most of than Trump or most of Trump's other advisors on the issue of, say, Iran.
Yes.
Right. And Bolton was setting him straight on things like negotiating with the Taliban. So, the Taliban that's been killing, Americans for
Taliban.
Yeah, that Taliban. One, right? The one that oppresses women in Afghanistan. That one. Right. So even though Bolton was setting him straight on that, I guess Bolton had to go. We're bleeding into the other issue, I know, but they're connected, aren't they?
No, they are connected, because again, I've talked about this analogy before. And so Trump has a real opportunity to, in my mind, prevent a 9/11 from happening. Again, we should go back in a second to this issue of what is the actual American interest in these 1,400 companies and stuff, because, there's a question there.
Yeah.
But he's got this opportunity. And instead of, I mean, God, he wouldn't even let his ego be appealed to by this explicit appeal that the Hong Konger protesters have been making to him. I mean, by name, they're calling him out and saying, liberate us. And they're imputing this power to liberate.
Well, they could name a section of Hong Kong after him, like the Israelis did with the Golan Heights or something.
Yeah. I was thinking the big problem is he doesn't have a Trump Tower there. It's all
a Trump Tower, exactly.
If
he had a facility of some kind there, a hotel, a casino, a golf course.
I don't know. Anyway,
he was one of the 1,500 businesses, right?
1,400, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's not doing that. And then we hear, that at the last minute he's canceled this meeting that probably, I believe, and I think many people agree, should never have been scheduled in the first place, which is to meet the Taliban. Yeah,
what a complex situation. We should have been out of Afghanistan years ago, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. What we continue to do there, just the other day, another young American died. A young man with a wife and small kids just was killed in Afghanistan, and this keeps happening over and over and over, really to no end as far as I can see. I can really see no logical end to it or any logical purpose for young Americans to die over there. And on the other hand, of course, we shouldn't be negotiating with the Taliban at all either. It's not as though our withdrawal would require us to do so. It's true that we haven't properly dealt with the Middle East. Iran is a major problem. They will continue to be a festering problem there, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, everywhere else in the Middle East, until and unless we deal with that problem.
Right.
But Trump's willingness to negotiate, apparently with just about anybody, is kind of disturbing. And that includes, and coming back to Hong Kong, that includes Xi. And if something interferes with his, love letter exchange with Kim, something interferes with his wonderful friendship with this great guy, President Xi, then it's going to be, I fear, the thing that's going to be sacrificed. The law that they're proposing to protect Hong Kong has got some good provisions in it, just like a law that was proposed by Senator Rubio several years ago, a couple of years ago at least, did. We should definitely be opening up the asylum doors for any Hong Konger who wants protection. We should definitely be behind all five. We should take a material stand on the substance of the five demands that the protesters have. We shouldn't be calling them rioters like Trump is. We should actually be endorsing the investigation of the police, the demand that all the protesters be released who've been arrested or charged. We should be behind all five of the demands of the protesters.
Yeah, well, also, one thing I've been doing I've had some interchange, actually. There's one woman in particular, Hong Konger, I've been, exchanging messages and stuff with her. Mm-hmm. And one thing I've been trying to do is draw the distinction between democracy and, of course, and we've talked about this before, a system that protects rights. Mm-hmm. So yes, endorse all their demands. Yes, voting more within the context of a limited government.
Right.
A good thing, because there are choices to be made as to personnel filling positions and things like that. And people should be afforded the ability to vote about that. They should be afforded the ability to vote on, say, ballot initiatives that are going to handle things that a government, properly does.
Right.
There are some options there. Do you make the legal age of drinking 17 or 18? That sort of stuff, right?
The reason why I'm all for democracy in this context is because it's pretty plain to me that democracy is the only club with the strength to really do anything. It's sure going to frighten the government of Beijing, mainland government, but it's the only thing that's going to get their attention. It's the only thing that will get foreign help, and it's only a combination of the mass support that the protests have in Hong Kong and possibly even China itself, mainland China itself, combined with assistance from abroad, that is the only thing that has a chance of saving Hong Kong right now.
Okay, so first thing is, of course, express unequivocal support out there. Make statements. This is what Trump should do. This is what many of our top lawmakers should do. Express that support, right?
Yes.
Second, explore at least what sort of American interest there is in some sort of intervention or help to the protesters. There are so many of them out on the streets. If you armed them,
Right.
then you could substantially help them, right?
Well, but
So,
before we even get to arming them, there are all kinds of diplomatic things that we can do. We can make it an issue. Trump doesn't appear to be making it even an issue
right.
in a diplomatic context. Say that this is going to affect the trade deal. Say that this is going to cancel cultural exchanges and student visas from mainland Chinese trying to study in the United States. Stuff like that. I mean, he could at least start taking some diplomatic steps to support them. Now, and then we'll see where it goes from there. And I'm not a military expert. I don't know what the
No.
Tactical dangers are for America there, and I would leave that to experts, and I would definitely defer
Exactly.
to experts on these
Exactly.
issues. But it seems to me that we can certainly take a moral stand, we can certainly take a diplomatic stand, and if warranted, and if it seems safe and appropriate, we should give them material support.
Yes.
Absolutely. And Miss Lamb, can go straight to hell. And I would tell her that, yeah, we are going to help to what extent we can. We're going to help and we're going to intervene. And if you don't like it, too bad. You're not a legitimate ruler, dear. It's the millions of
Yeah,
people.
it's like the husband who beats the wife saying, "Stay out of our domestic affairs."
Right.
No,
Right.
no.
Right. This is our business. So stay away. I can beat my wife. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No. And
Exactly
that's
analogous.
exactly what I saw this morning on the headline.
And that is a great analogy.
Well, it's just true.
Right.
So there's that. And then but this idea of giving them aid there, it seems that most of them are motivated to, at this point, still make things better there.
Mm-hmm.
But if for some reason they either see that it's a losing battle, or otherwise we aren't able to help them provide the assistance, we're not able to provide the assistance that's required to help them win, or other people aren't, I would not blame them at all if they wanted to just get out of there. Because when we talk about saving Hong Kong, let's be really clear. Stand with Hong Kong, save Hong Kong. It's the people, right? That place is an empty shell without those people of Hong Kong. So it's not, okay, it's a gorgeous sky. I've never been there, but I've heard it's just
it's beautiful. You can see from the pictures, right? And they've got amazing modern facilities. The physical infrastructure there that China could take over is wonderful, but you're absolutely right. It is nothing compared to the people.
Well, and it's nothing without the people.
Without the people, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, or without the system. If they come in and bring in, authoritarianism, it's just going to be counterproductive, and everything that made Hong Kong wonderful is going to go away up in smoke in 10 seconds. So yeah, it's the people who we need to be protecting and offering. So I don't even understand. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, so we could go into the next part of this discussion right now. Asylum. So I have, and you could say, okay, well, I'm being premature in saying, they should be able to come here. Maybe they don't want to come here. They have to reach the point, again, it's their decision to make. And whichever they decide to do, if they decide they want to stick it out there and try to make it better, then we help them to the extent we can. We could, it seems like maybe nobody, not even us, anybody else, is able to help them enough to make it a winnable battle. We might try at a certain point to say, look, it doesn't look so good for you guys. Some experts could consult them. But, if they're behind it and they seem to have a shot and we can give them support, and we decide it's in our national interest. Oh, one thing I was going to say, in sort of expressing the moral support for them and doing his diplomatic things, one thing Trump could do is he could say, look, I don't know if there is an actual national interest in sending our military there, or using resources of our military to arm them, or do whatever the military experts think would be the thing. Maybe he's saying that's not a proper American interest, and I'm open to that. But suppose he said, look, all you Americans, start a private GoFundMe revolution in Hong Kong or whatever. No, but I'm serious, right?
Right.
But if suppose he spoke out forthrightly for people to just privately donate resources or to volunteer to go over there and be mercenaries and just help them. I have these people, we're talking, Trump supporter type people, so I doubt the earnestness of this. I stand by my fellow people in Hong Kong. Okay, really? So go and do it if
Go,
you
yeah.
want, right?
What are you actually doing to help support
Right.
them?
So, Trump could
Yeah.
just say, yes, we stand fully behind this. If you want to go over there, et cetera. Now, of course, if people could choose to go over there and then their American lives lost, and then suddenly we have a higher stake, and then maybe we do have to intervene.
Mhm.
How do you work this out? But it at least maybe donating resources,
Yeah.
and that he could, as American president, encourage that and talk about the fact that if talk about make America great again, and he supposedly embodies the American spirit, I say that those people in Hong Kong are so much more American than many Americans are.
Open the door. Open the door.
Well, right. So that's it. So then the next thing is, if they decide, no, okay, we get it. The writing's on the wall. Xi and his puppet, Miss Lam over in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
they're just going to destroy us. And we recognize, as good principled Hong Kongers, that we do not have a moral duty to sit here and be cannon fodder for some scumbag.
Right.
So if they do that and then they decide they want to go somewhere, should we not just lay out the red carpet for them? This is the question, right? So then
I would have passenger ships sent over there, by the hundreds, to get as many out as possible if it looked like China was going to take over.
yeah,
I grew up in Southern California in the 1970s, and the Vietnam War was not such a good idea, and it ended, of course, very disastrously. But in California in the 1970s, we took thousands upon thousands of refugees from South Vietnam, and it had only a positive impact on America. High school valedictorians, college graduates, business owners, and now that decades have passed, we can see that it was one of the best things that ever happened. Like so many waves of immigrants coming to this country have been the best thing about America,
yes.
and embracing refugees from that kind of a situation has only served our interests,
Yes.
both domestically, economically, and culturally, and politically. It seems to me. One of my best friends as a kid in the 70s when I was growing up was actually a Vietnamese refugee and an immigrant, and what a wonderful family he had. But no, obviously Trump can't. Has got to rub him the wrong way too, because that's opening the door to more immigrants, showing immigration of from peaceful nations is a good thing, a positive thing, and that would be a massive counterexample to Trump's very aggressively hostile anti-immigration policy.
Yeah, it sure would. It definitely would. Jean over in the chat at YouTube had a great suggestion. She says, maybe we could buy Hong Kong instead of Greenland.
Well, what price would China take for it? Now, there's Trump. Trump could strike.
Of course, we're already in such debt to China anyway.
Right. Well, yeah. But I would be open to discussions with China on the issue of leaving Hong Kong alone if we could trust China. One of the problems I have with any negotiation with Xi, any deal with Xi,
Yes.
we've already have 9 different rulings from the World Trade Organization against China. What belief does Trump have in his own mind, even for a trade deal, that the Chinese are actually going to comply or actually going to obey? I mean, once they get another president, why should they care? 10 years from now, would there be any interest on the part of Beijing to comply with the trade agreement that Trump works out today?
No.
See, I don't see them complying. I mean, it's the same problem with negotiating with the Taliban or with Kim of North Korea. I just don't trust any of those people, or Iran. I just don't trust any of those people to keep any deal that we might ever strike with them. I wouldn't be negotiating with them at all in one sense. If China I mean, Hong Kong is one thing that I might actually negotiate with China on. Keep your paws off, and let us actually go in there and offer material defense support for the island of Hong Kong. If China would agree to allow us the opportunity to provide the military support in a substantive way, maybe I would agree with China, strike a deal with China. But for trade,
Yeah.
come on. They're not gonna comply with that kind of an agreement.
No, no. But here's the thing. So because of the proximity though, too, right? I worry about, if even if you bought Hong Kong,
Well,
what
if we
sort
could
of
put,
security?
build a Marine base there, an Air Force base there, then and only then would I start to have some material security for, the future of Hong Kong. You're right. The proximity of mainland China is such that I don't have much hope for Hong Kong. I still don't have much hope for Hong Kong. And it is specifically the, Trump and the West's response that has me so sad. The brave, like you say, the brave people of Hong Kong are acting heroically. I mean, they're the ones who we should be supporting
Yes,
in every way we
yes.
can.
So then it's, if they decide, okay, here's all the options that we've explored about helping them where they are, helping them improve their situation where they are. I mean, 2047 is coming up too. And if you think China is clamping down now, imagine when they feel entitled in 2047, what's going to happen? So the question is, what do you do about the people? Because again, Hong Kong, it's the people.
Right.
That place without the people and their knowledge and productivity and principled nature, obviously, as demonstrated by what they're doing, it's an empty shell. And I say, F them, right? China,
Right.
Carrie Lam and all those people, let them have the empty shell. Is a, like Wyatt's torch,
Right.
right? He says, come
That's probably the
come and
best.
take it the way I found it, right? So suppose they decide, and again, it's their decision. They have to come around to that decision. We might try to educate them a little bit about the fact that there's no moral duty to remain, and you know,
Right.
try to look at what the serious prospects are. So then the question is, in what form do you welcome them here? And so this is where I was starting to get really aggravated, because I'm online saying, hey, let them come here. And so then I get this pushback, and the sort of pushback that I'm getting is in this one tweet that I embedded again in the program notes at don'tletitgo.com. But there was a much longer discussion in the Yaron Brook Show group. There's a Yaron Brook Show group on Facebook. And so I was in there and some guy was talking about it. And this is the sort of thing. There's a sense among some people who are Trump supporters, but at the same time, they want to show some sympathy for Hong Kong because they know that if you don't show people sympathy for these people who are waving the American flags and they're just patently so American, if you don't show sympathy for them, you are a jerk at best.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't say something good about you.
No. And so this is their form. They say, well, they should apply for asylum. Maybe not now, because it's too soon. And, they need to stick it out there. And if they were to say that they want to come and apply for asylum, if they keep throwing that in, if they were going to apply for asylum right now, then they'd be sending the signal that they give up the fight, and they should fight for Hong Kong, and, they should improve situations over there, and this is the same anti-immigrant refrain, but it's got this nice sugar coating on it.
Right.
Oh, we love them. We admire them. We stand with our brothers and sisters in Hong Kong, but don't let them come here. Not yet anyway. And then, sure, if you apply for asylum, we think you should get, at the head of the line. You should. It's so ridiculous. So here's my concern for people who aren't getting it yet, because why should these heroic, courageous people be told that they must apply for asylum before they should come here? Is there any question that the people who are engaged in this principled fight are not worthy of like I said, rolling out the red carpet. You said send the steamships over to,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, when we talk about the asylum crisis on the Mexican border, for example, and Central American people migrating through Mexico to get to America, applying for asylum here, uh, the the obvious Trump position is that, well, we can't loosen up, our asylum laws. If anything, we need to tighten the screws in our asylum laws, which is, of course, just the reverse of the truth. We should be liberalizing our asylum laws instead of, making them harder to get through, with more loops to get through.
I mean, asylum
Why do
laws
we
are
even have
for.
asylum? Yeah, I don't even get the whole concept.
Well, okay, so I'm
Because
like,
anyone who's peaceful should be able to come in, right? You shouldn't
I mean,
say
that's
that
our stance,
I'm
right?
worried about violent discrimination in my own country. They should be free to just come right through anyway, because if they can demonstrate that they're peaceful themselves. I mean, that's it, period. Over, just discussion over. If they are not an objective physical threat to America, they should be allowed into America. In the case of Hong Kong, we should roll out the red carpet. You're absolutely right. We should send ships to go pick them up, in my view. Actively get as many over here as possible if it looks like Hong Kong's going under. No question about it, in my mind. So the idea of even messing around with the asylum laws is itself insulting, frankly, to peaceful, productive people who should have, in my mind, have every right to come here anyway. Just as much as I have a right to employ them and hire them and sell them my property if I want to. So they have a right to come here, so long as they're not violent or terrorists or criminals, as far as I'm concerned.
Asylum is a form of like guilty before proven innocent sort of thing. And I think that any check at the border for anybody in the normal case, right, should be just some sort of a check to make sure that they are peaceful, that they are not, some sort of fleeing criminal, violent criminal, or part of an enemy, army or whatever, right?
ISIS or Al Qaeda or something. If we can identify them as in any way like that, of course, I'd say keep them out. Right? If they're wanted criminals, I'd keep them out. We have every right to do that. If they're a physical danger to Americans, that's one thing. But the asylum laws themselves are, in my mind, totally unnecessary.
Well, okay, so I was thinking, what is there an appropriate role for asylum laws? There probably is, right? When we're in a state of war, say with a communist country,
right?
Suppose there's someone who wants to, like a dissident, one of the Chinese dissidents, for example, who actually remain living in China, but then they want to come here. Maybe that person is going to go through an asylum process to say, yes, I really am a dissident, somebody whose life is at risk. I'm not part of this enemy regime that you want to keep out. But you have to say, okay, here's an enemy regime. Most people in this regime would actually be a danger to us. We would not let them in.
Right.
But we'll have this process called asylum to make exceptions. But to me, anybody in Hong Kong,
right.
I mean, they're living in Hong Kong, right?
Right. I mean, the analogy I'd use, maybe that might make it easier for everyone, is we're World War II. We're actively at war with Nazi Germany. We're not going to allow every German who wants to come in to come in. On the other hand, if you're an anti-Nazi, dissident, if you're Ludwig von Mises or something,
or Jewish.
Well, he was both Jewish and a liberal intellectual, opposed Nazi Hitler. So if it's someone like Ludwig von Mises or something, you welcome him in. You take active steps to allow Nazi dissidents to come in, even if we ourselves have a problem with Nazi Germany. Excellent analogy. There's a good role for asylum laws in that context for sure.
Yes, but that's a limited context.
But most contexts, though, they're really not necessary. They shouldn't be necessary.
Do you happen to know the sort of hoops that you have to jump through for asylum? I mean, again, I assume that it's a guilty before proven innocent that you're having to show. I remember hearing about a standard that you have to show that you are some sort of an opponent whose life is at risk because of your opposition to
you have to be in a specified class too. I mean, because of your race or your sex or your, for some specific reason like that, in addition to actual physical threat of physical harm from the state, as well. I guess another one of the categories is a dissident from the government. But unless you can show one of those positive features, I'm going to be discriminated against for my political views or because of my race, and I am actually under physical danger from this government the government I'm living under, you don't qualify for asylum. And on the other hand, our process is so messed up that when they come from Central America, right, it's sort of a joke, right?
Yes.
My sympathy is with the Central Americans. I'm not on Trump's side here, but the point, a lot of the criticism of our asylum laws is well taken in the sense that it's a joke. That you can come in here, you can human traffic children, say that we're applying for asylum, get released into the country, and what you've done is you've actually brought, children over that you're going to traffic as sex slaves or something. So it is kind of a joke. What protection against criminals there should be at the border isn't there at all. Right? And I've very often used the analogy of the needle in the haystack at the border. If we're keeping out the whole haystack of immigrants, we're never going to actually zero in on the needles that need attention.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
It does. And then plus detaining, all this detention stuff too. So can we just, screen people properly?
Right.
Yeah, if they're obviously trafficking and other things, we have to just get.
I don't think. And
the other thing though is too, right? So, part of it is the cost of doing the proper screening, and I've always said that the cost should be either borne by the person who wants to come in, because there is a proper role for screening at a border.
Perfectly reasonable.
If a government has jurisdiction over the area, there's a proper role to screen just to see if there is a physical threat to people within.
I might even go so far as to say that if you're bringing children over, some demonstration that they are your children.
Exactly. Yeah,
would be appropriate.
At that. Israelis are really good at doing all sorts of screening and stuff. Perhaps we could tap into some expertise there. They have to be expert at it because they're living in a hotbed where there's enemies all around them that want to kill them.
Right.
We could probably learn some things from them about being able to be better screeners. But, the resources, it should be paid either by the immigrant, him or herself.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a charitable organization that's willing to cover the costs.
Absolutely.
So there's nothing that says, oh, we have this huge burden. People should, come in when they're ready to pay the costs of the screening that is appropriate. Required for anybody to come into a new area with no history. And the second would be, that they're going to be productive, that they don't get to come here and just start collecting their checks or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, in general.
And again, we have laws on the books that should do that, and they're a joke. Most of the time they're not enforced, but we do have laws that say new immigrants can't get federal assistance.
And part of that is the leftists' type of challenge, because if we try to make a law that excludes immigrants from receiving welfare benefits or
just to enforce it.
They say, oh, this is discrimination and, it's a lack of equal protection of the laws, and there's all this that goes on. So peeling off the layers of the onion, immigration reform versus welfare program is a tough thing, right?
Yes.
It can be, but certainly we should be denying it to immigrants, and we should be phasing it out for people who are already here as well. But that's a different topic. So going back to this with the Hong Kongers, it's, support them in whatever they want to do, maybe try to educate them a little bit, because I, in this sort of situation, am concerned that they're going to feel a duty to maybe sacrifice themselves for a losing cause. I don't know that. Again, military experts and all these people who really know what the chances are and what help they need to be given in order to have a shot at success and all this stuff, it all needs to be evaluated. But if they decide they want to come here, roll out that red carpet. These people deserve a red carpet. It should.
And if they don't know that
anyway, but for sure for these people.
If they don't know that we're going to welcome them, maybe they will feel desperate with their backs against the wall. I mean, where do you go if you're on the island of Hong Kong and you're not getting international support? Or if Trump says, no, we're not welcoming you, a bunch of rioters, Trump continues to treat them as he is. If you were one of those brave people on the streets of Hong Kong, would you not feel your back was kind of against the wall? It's this or
Yes.
nothing.
Yes. That's the only option that they have. And that is not anything that you want to do if you have an option to give them otherwise. And so here's Trump. He's been appealed to by name. He has all the power. And instead of that, he's spending his time deciding over, well, is he or is he not going to meet with the Taliban? And, when he tweeted about it, it was on Sunday, I believe. And he said, he canceled this at the last minute or something. He cited some recent atrocity that the Taliban had committed. Maybe, is it the killing that you just referred to?
Right. Okay. Exactly. That's what he did. The most recent killing. And as if the Taliban's basic nature and how they treat their own people and how they've been killing us for years isn't enough to do it, right? I mean, they've been fighting the democratically elected government of part of Afghanistan for how long?
Yeah.
Right.
There's only one thought that I had though, right? So, because I'm starting to get an idea of at least how we could joke about how his mind works, whether it actually works this way, I don't know. Here's your
mind works.
Okay, but say he thinks, look, I'm Trump. I'm willing to meet with everybody, and he of course also thinks that they should feel honored and that their behavior should immediately change once he's granted them a meeting and an invitation to Camp David. And so he expected, well, now they're going to be the good Taliban.
Right. I can cut a deal with anyone, and they're willing to. Right.
And they're going to show appreciation, and they're going to stop doing their scumbag behavior, and I'm going to take credit for it on the week of 9/11. See? So he actually thought that would happen, that the Taliban would cease to be the Taliban because he invited them to Camp David.
Right. No, he butters up Kim, and he figures that's what does it. He'll butter up that. What do you think the buttering up of authoritarians is? There's got to be some kind of psychology, just like you're describing. He's got to actually think he's psychologically playing these monsters, and that they can be psychologically played.
Mm-hmm.
And if he didn't think that, he wouldn't be, buttering them up and complimenting them and saying they're wonderful people and exchanging love letters with them, etc.
Yeah.
That whole approach kind of reveals, Trump's psychology, I think, to some extent, about how he's dealing with these people.
I mean, I'm speculating. And should I be speculating? But
I don't think it's much speculation.
Okay.
Not as he's buttering up authoritarians that he would, privately, sotto voce to us. Well, the only reason why that's the way I negotiate. If he actually even said that a couple of weeks ago, didn't he? That's my negotiating style.
Yes.
That's why I do it.
What did the stock market do when he said that, right?
Yeah, right.
I didn't put the link in the program notes, but I wanted to. The Bloomberg had the story about the Volfefe index, which is a thing.
Right.
How does the stock market change based on his tweets? When he tweets about, oh, well, that's just my negotiating style, that people are going, what in the world? Why are you revealing your hand on Twitter about it?
Butter them up and then tell everyone, over here, whisper, this is why I'm doing it. But of course, everything he says that's why the buttering up, it makes no sense in the first place, right? What a president says, even just the moral impact of his words is a real impact.
Yes.
The buttering up itself says to these dictators, it's okay, you could be a dictator. Trump will go even further. He'll say, if you get rid of your nuclear weapons, Kim, we'll secure your dictatorial regime in North Korea. We'll secure you. You can be a dictator for the rest of your life, and your own people can be imprisoned and starved or whatever, so long as you give up your nuclear weapons, right? It reveals the whole, you're not speculating there. Trump tells us and telegraphs it all the time. He really thinks he can work these people psychologically. And they're monsters. He thinks he can work monsters psychologically.
Yeah.
That's the way I describe it.
So I'm not sure how to go to the next topic, because a good transition would be that Bolton is pretty sure that he can't work monsters psychologically, and perhaps that's why he was fired. But we'll take an intermission between that, because I was going to note something about this whole scheduling of the Taliban meeting, which, just, I was going to say made me apoplectic, but that's not usually a word that I use. I was, especially with this juxtaposition of not saying anything about Hong Kong, pretty horrified that he inviting them, and it's the week of 9/11 and all this, right?
Oh yeah.
So
So the combination is just, you're absolutely right. The way he's treating Hong Kong, and then to say he was going to meet with the Taliban at Camp David. Whoa.
Yeah. Scumbags, he's elevating them.
Right.
Heroes,
he's
ignoring them.
No, he'll step on them, I think, if necessary.
Yeah, to get his trade
he'll
deal.
Sell them out. Yeah, exactly. No, he'll sell them out in a heartbeat if he gets the kind of deal he wants on, trade with China. Or
I would assume that part of Americanism and part of a great America is the principle of justice. But
freedom, justice, truth,
supporting the good.
What does America stand for? Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So the one thing I was going to point out with this is that I was out on Twitter about all this, and venting and getting myself in debates I probably shouldn't have, because it was just stressing me out and all that stuff. One thing I saw was Tammy Bruce. Tammy Bruce has been a very vocal Trump supporter, and I've been friends with Tammy Bruce, and she and I are not been super close right now, but we're still, friendly at a distance from each other and stuff. And every so often there's a tiny bit of an exchange with her. So, and she follows me and I follow her, and I kind of feel she'll figure it out. Right. So I saw a little inkling of maybe she's figuring it out because of this, because Lynn Cheney tweeted out how horrible it was for Trump to be inviting the Taliban to Camp David. And she was talking about the importance of Camp David in particular in history. And I'm the first to admit that probably I don't appreciate the history of Camp David nearly as well as she does. But I'm still offended by it for my own reasons.
Well,
but Lynn Cheney is just super.
Even Yasser Arafat was invited to Camp David, right? When you know what I mean?
This was Carter, right?
Well, yeah. Well,
okay.
Arafat packed with Clinton, I think, was even invited.
Okay.
So, but even earlier with Carter, right? You'd meet.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'd meet with any enemy of Israel if you could get a deal with Israel, right? So Camp David has been used to
do some yucky things.
Yucky things with Middle Eastern yucky.
But not with a Republican president.
Not with a Republican president yet. But Trump was perfectly willing to do it, apparently, and had it penciled in. If it hadn't been for the optics and for the political blowback, and that's really what I think it was. I think far more than the death of that young American, it was concern with domestic politics. His own party,
right? But that was connected to the death of the American, of course.
Right.
He was going. So Lynn is out there just saying this is terrible, and so then Tammy tweeted, and I'm just sort of paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but she said, yeah, I'm actually, I think she said offended, something like that this meeting was ever scheduled.
Right.
Okay. So I tweeted back to her, and I mean, Tammy, I love her and I want her to figure this out. And she's got such a great independent spirit and everything else. And
she does.
But she's really been praising Trump, and it makes me sad. But I tweeted back to her. I said, I noticed you use the passive voice. And I said, maybe it's hard for you to believe that Trump had a significant hand in this.
Meetings were scheduled, Amy.
Meetings were scheduled.
Mistakes were made. There's no reason to specify who did what when.
Right. And I don't know if she did that consciously or subconsciously, but watching wheels turn in her mind, like, wow.
Yeah.
He's doing this. Now, I don't know if she read my tweet. She's, got tons of followers, and she's big on Fox, and, she, tons of response on Twitter and everything. So who knows if I'm hoping that, she's thinking a little bit.
And she's independent-minded enough. She should be able to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get another piece of the puzzle today, which is this firing of Bolton, whom she has always admired. And if some of the reports that I've heard about are true, he's fired because he doesn't like all of this buttering up scumbags that Trump has been doing. And this latest example of the Taliban being one in particular.
Honestly,
So
I
that
think
it's not that meetings
yeah.
were scheduled, it's that he wanted, you know, and Trump actually doubled down this morning on Twitter. He says, it wasn't the case that I was vetoing my advisors. I'm all in. And I actually added on that thread to Tammy. I sent that link just with no comment. Just here's a piece, you know.
I think we all know that if Bolton had his way, he would much prefer a much more aggressive stance against Iran. I'm not sure I'd agree with him about Afghanistan, because I'm pretty sure he'd say we should stay in Afghanistan. But you know, if you talk to someone like Tammy Bruce, it's clear. I mean, take there just on the grounds that she's a feminist, right? Look at what's going on in Iran and Afghanistan, and Trump is perfectly willing to sell the Islamic world down the river just as even faster than he would sell the Hong Kongers down the river, as far as I can see. Yes. So I think that an honest mind has to recognize that, well, the president's the one who sets policy, but the optics of Bolton's departure, whether it's what Bolton says or what Trump says about their departure, whether he quit or was
now, what
fired.
did Bolton say? I haven't seen that part of it because I was rushing around.
Well,
what do you make of?
There, you know, Bolton says that the previous night he had told the president that he was thinking about quitting, and he slept on it, and he met with the president and said, "I'm out of here. I'm quitting." Trump, however, yesterday says, released the statement, no, I asked him to leave. We had differences of opinion.
Well, okay, so I was looking at the tweet, right? And the tweet that I saw said, I told him that his services were not needed.
Right. That's the exact phrase. His services would be no longer necessary here at the White House.
In the context of what type of conversation was it? Bolton's resignation conversation, and then you know, he says, I'm going to resign, and he says, oh good, because we don't need you anyway.
Right. And the White House spokesman doubled down.
I'm telling you,
right.
You know, I have to tell you, passive voice with Tammy, I'm very sensitive to the wording of this stuff, right? I've got that high school English teacher, and I used to have this as my pinned tweet. I should just go back and get it again because it just comes up all the time. I had this high school English teacher, Gary Poe. He's the one who assigned the Fountainhead. And one of his sayings that he gives us all the time is, life is one long reading test. Life is one long reading test. And so I'll take those. Yeah, I parse those damn tweets, you know, and I want to figure out. So we don't know, right? He could say, well, what he said there is strictly true. He did tell Bolton that his services were no longer necessary,
right,
after Bolton came in. Right.
But that implies one of them is misleading us at the very least. Bolton directly says, I didn't like what was going on. I quit. Trump implies with his statement that I fired him. So it's true that you know, if you parse it all the way down to the specific words, Trump may have actually used those words with Bolton at the end of the meeting or something. But obviously, someone's misleading us here. Both can't be true in their implications, at the very least. It is true. It's if you're.
What if it was something like? I mean, the story will come out later, but I'll speculate one more time. What if it was something like, you know, Bolton either doesn't appreciate Trump not following his recommendations, or doesn't want to be thrown under the bus with respect to this particular Taliban thing, and maybe there was something brewing about that. Or maybe he's saying, I want you to go out there and say that I had nothing to do with this, as there's like an integrity thing. Who knows? You know, Bolton in a lot of ways has seemed better. I disagreed with him, and I had a debate with him about Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
On a lot of things,
you disagreed with him when you interviewed him. You guys had a pretty good disagreement.
Yes.
I recall that
myself.
myself.
I think he's good. A lot of that.
Yeah. Well, he sure is better, I think, than, I mean, the president sets foreign policy. And the national security advisor totally serves at the will of the president. He's a White House staffer, in effect. And so he can, you know, who that is and whether the president even listens to the person, but the optics here, especially in the wake of the Taliban thing, makes it look like Trump will only tolerate yes men around him, frankly. And he can't really tolerate anyone who has a difference of opinion. Even if we go from what Trump is saying, I got rid of him, And I got rid of him here in the wake of this Taliban thing. Ah, I see. So the guy who was setting you straight about the Taliban is the guy who's got to go.
Yes. Yes.
You really need yes men, don't you?
Yeah. And so then the question is, will someone like a Tammy Bruce, who's a good independent thinker but has kind of gone the Trump way, is she going to start moderating her support for him in some ways because of this? And that'd be interesting to see how it goes. But
I don't see her joining the never Trump Republicans anytime soon. But at least, what distresses me sometimes about Trump supporters is that they're uncritical in the way they support him. It would be fine, if someone says, look, I'm going to vote Trump because I so fear the Democrats and the Green New Deal and these socialists are so far left. I could understand that as logic, but for example, to twist ourselves into pretzels over Hong Kong, to twist ourselves in pretzels over trade or immigration, to twist ourselves in pretzels over dictators and talking nice to dictators. I don't get that. If you can't see that it's just wrong to meet with the Taliban at Camp David on the week of 9/11,
no. And of course, I've been criticized for making that criticism of Trump. How dare he actually try to resolve this long war? Okay, so we shouldn't have been in Afghanistan in the first place. And certainly we could get out in a way that doesn't involve negotiating with proven scumbags.
Right.
So
no, even if you thought that we should be in Afghanistan in the wake of 9/11 to take out those Al-Qaeda camps, what were we doing there for the last 15 years, Amy?
Yes.
I mean, obviously the real war wasn't in Iraq or Afghanistan, but in Iran. Iran should have always been our priority.
15
we always keep coming back to Iran. They have never been, and so long as the government of Iran stays in power, that we will have a festering problem in the Middle East. And until and unless we address that problem, all the other problems will continue. And it really doesn't matter how we deal with Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan, because the permanent problem there right now is Iran. I mean, we could have gone to war, talk about Jimmy Carter, way back in the late 90s. How many acts of war has the Iranian government done that we've overlooked?
Do you remember that song that we grew up with here? It was to the Beach Boys tune Barbara Ann, and it was Bomb Iran.
Bomb Iran.
Remember?
Bomb Iran.
This was the 70s.
Right.
Nobody would do that now, would they?
No. But, they
what in the
took
world?
over the embassy and held hostage diplomatic personnel. Right? I mean, a clear act of war.
Yes.
And how more recently they've been mining the Strait of Hormuz. They've been taking ships. They've been their drones have been coming out to get us.
Horrible things to their women. I just saw a story recently about this woman. What is it? She dared to go to a football game.
Right. Women don't belong at football stadiums.
Sentenced to 6 months in prison. And instead of face that, because I guess she knew what was going to happen to her in prison.
Right.
She burned herself.
Yep. Set herself on fire, and she died, I understand, just recently.
Yes. That's the regime he's going to be willing to meet with.
Oh, no. Women and children and gays are systematically abused in that country. It's that simple.
Okay, can we get on a more pleasant topic? I'm sorry. We are not. I don't know if we're going to solve this right now. And So
and Bolton was better. I guess the bottom line there is that Bolton was a lot better on Iran. And I think if Bolton had his way, we would be taking a much harder line on Iran. Maybe also on the Taliban too, but at least on Iran. Trump seems perfectly willing to make deals, even if he backs away from the meeting with the Taliban, and even if he says right now, I'm skeptical and they're dead to me. What did he say yesterday? The Taliban are dead to me.
Oh, okay.
Dead to me now. Okay. Oh, okay.
Because they didn't change their ways in response to my meeting with them.
Right. See, and I don't believe that for 5 minutes. And I even if he believes that, even if I were to believe that about the Taliban, I think he'd be perfectly.
Well, okay. So here's the question: did he say that before or after they put that statement out after being snubbed with their meeting that they never deserved.
After the snub.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, but then they had that statement about we're going to continue the war for 100 years or something.
Right. You'll suffer more than we will. Right.
Maybe is that when he said that you're dead to me? Or
I don't know with respect to that statement, but I know it was after the
you have
meeting.
to look at the timing of these.
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
The FE index and the.
Yeah. No, it was after they canceled the meeting, though, that he said they're dead to me. So he put some extra frosting on the cake of canceling the meeting for political purposes, I think, here at home. People in his own party, the Republicans, were very distressed at the idea of the meeting with the Taliban. People from the George W. Bush administration were very, very concerned about it. And while Trump is very different than those people, and a lot of those people don't support him, a lot of those people did support him and were willing to hang with him. You know, Tammy, other people, a lot of Republicans who were supporting Trump, you know, I think we're taken aback, I think, a bit by the proposed meeting with the Taliban. And so for political purposes, he piled on and said, they're dead to me. Don't worry, they're dead to me. But I don't for 5 minutes believe that he wouldn't make a deal with Iran if it was the kind of deal that he wanted. I think he's willing to make a deal with anybody.
Except now the Taliban, and only for political reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
At the moment, they're dead to him for political reasons.
So I'll talk about a little bit on something substantive and pleasant that I'm making some progress on. Okay.
Yes.
And it's my little, I call it little. To me, it's big, but
it is big.
Kind of little in the scheme of things. Maybe it's going to be big at some point and make a little bit of waves. I have something called the Center for Legalization of Privacy. It's a real organization now. It's, registered in the state of California and all this stuff, right? And you can find it at legalizeprivacy.org. And I have two main things that I'm doing right now. One of them I was sort of engaging in before I even started it as an official organization that's registered and everything. But the other is new. One of them is I have for years been engaging in a bit of a correspondence with Josh Ukella, who is a state legislative representative in the state of New Hampshire. And he's been recently elected. And he's going in there trying to do some good. And one of the things that he wants to do, I was going to say bless his heart, only just because for me, I value it so personally, but bless his heart is so, it's like diminutive almost. I don't know. This is so big too, what he's doing, but it's just it's personally valuable to me. So I want to say bless his heart. It's the wrong thing. There must be a better expression. Anyway, what he's doing is he is trying to embody my solution to the third party doctrine in the New Hampshire state constitution. Now that's a bunch of verbiage. Let me tell you what it is that he's trying to put in there. What I should actually do is get onto the language. I got to find the language that he has been proposing. And actually, I think I've got the language copied in my photos. So I love the iPhone, by the way. Boy, these devices that we have, they are just so beautiful.
Excuse me.
Okay. You okay, sir?
Yeah, I just needed to eliminate some sound.
Okay. So the old language of the appropriate provision, it's Article 19 of New Hampshire State Constitution, says every subject hath a right to be secure from all unreasonable searches and seizures of his person, his houses, his papers, and all his possessions. And then it says, therefore, all warrants to search suspected places or arrest a person for examination or trial and prosecutions for criminal matters are contrary to this right in the cause or foundation of them not previously supported by oath or affirmation, etc. So it sounds like a lot like the fourth.
Right.
He wants to add a clause to this as to what is protected by warrant requirement.
Right.
Okay? And he wants it to be this. Every subject hath a right to be secure from all unreasonable searches and seizures of a person, houses, his papers, all his possessions, and information shared for a limited purpose as part of a legally enforceable contractual agreement, period.
Beautiful. And
That's
with
the
simple language like that, right? We correct.
Okay, now
the
here's the
third-party
thing,
doctrine.
right?
Right.
To me, that is, it's beautiful, simple language.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, and this is a question for you, James, because you have a good legal mind as well, that you could wrap around this. But there was a legislative consultant who was also an attorney in New Hampshire who suggested that beautiful, clean language, as opposed to language that I was originally working on with Josh. And the language I was working on with him was going to use that term third party in it. So here's language that I had thought we would use. It's going to be including information that is shared with a third party for a limited purpose as part of a legally enforceable contractual agreement, period. So all that legislative assistant.
I've decided I want both.
So that you would want the term third party to be included in that?
Oh,
now,
my fear, let me take apart the two. The first, my fear is, I think that's elegant and it should imply what you're saying.
Yes.
Right? But would it? Would they take that and language, and that, is it too abstract and too broad? Would they see that it was a total reform of the third party doctrine? It implicitly states it, and it states it in any context, I would think. But then the second one, your language actually makes it quite specific and clear. Yeah, we mean the third party doctrine. And then to go to the other side, if it were just your language, then I'm afraid that it wouldn't have the broader implications.
Well, actually, my language included the rest of the language.
Oh, okay, then
I just added the phrase with a third party.
Exactly. I want the whole formula.
You would want the whole formula because you believe that.
I don't want the courts to have wiggle room to interpret that.
You believe that a judge interpreting this would maybe deliberately misunderstand this, which is clearly intended to eliminate the doctrine. I mean, this is the thing. To me, the third party doctrine is kind of this convoluted thing. And I lose people when I start to talk about it. What a third party, who's the third party? Who's the first, second, third party? Who's on first, right? What is this? So I appreciate the simple language, and I agree with you that a rational person should see that this is the implication, right?
Right.
I would feel better leaving this language.
Enough phrases in the Constitution be torn apart, right? Haven't we seen enough of, if the Interstate Commerce Clause or, the Necessary and Proper Clause can be so bent out of shape by judicial fiat, then my concern, is to bend over backwards to make sure that a judge doesn't have the leeway to misinterpret it. No, we mean the third party doctrine. We mean this to include, contractual privacy, including anything like Facebook or internet providers. You make it really clear. And so long as all that language is in there, that I feel good.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting. And I'm going to go back with him if he has, I told him I was going to talk about this today, or I asked him first, can I, is it okay? But anyway, this is one of the things I'm working on. This is very exciting. What would happen with this is it would become a referendum on the ballot there. And so one of the questions that I had in maybe agreeing to the simpler language was, could we include the reference to the doctrine, sort of the more arcane, obtuse stuff, right? Could we include that in a voter information blurb? Or is there some sort of a preamble as to intent that
say right there in the title that you're correcting the third party doctrine? Say in the description.
In the title.
Yeah, say in the description exactly what you're doing.
But the title could lose people. Privacy. The title could lose people, right?
That's true. But when it comes to interpreting it later down the road by courts, they're going to look to legislative intent, voter intent, things like that. And things like the description paragraph in the voter pamphlet, the title of the thing, will matter in terms of interpreting it. I've been there myself doing appellate work, where you have to go back to the legislative intent or the voter intent. And there you do look at, when it's like a state proposition in California, you do look at the actual language that's used to sell it to the voters.
Yes. Okay. So maybe if it's going to be the simpler language in the Constitution, which I actually would understand, because I think the third party doctrine is this convoluted thing. And maybe you should just make the simple statement that people have a right to make contracts that include provisions to keep things confidential.
Right.
Right.
That's beautiful.
Well,
Beautiful.
and that was some of the language that Josh and I have been going back and forth about. And he threw in the word confidential, which is just beautiful, because we were talking about keep it private and the blah, blah, secure, keep it secure. No, government thinks they're so secure. Keep it confidential.
Confidential.
Yeah.
Entre nous, secret between us. Right.
Josh had a great word there.
Yeah.
So if you put some of the stuff in the pamphlet, then you might feel, more sanguine about leaving the simpler language in the Constitution, because this should never have happened in the first place,
Right.
this weird third party doctrine.
Right.
So maybe we don't want to even acknowledge that it should have happened. There's that to think about. So,
Right.
but your feeling is that we should try to make some reference that makes clear the intent to eliminate this doctrine in the voter pamphlet at least.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
No, and specify exactly what your purpose is. This is the problem that we're trying to address, and concretely describe the problem you're trying to address. And we're going to fix that by changing it this way, and the third party doctrine itself is going to be altered. Boom.
What if you described the concrete problem or referenced a particular New Hampshire case that embodied it without throwing out the phrase, putting the phrase in third party doctrine? What if we just describe the concrete and say, as in the case of some, when this thing happened, fix that? Is that
it probably would be sufficient?
Okay.
Saying we're going to get rid of the case. I don't know what the case in New Hampshire is that did it.
Yeah, there's a history. There's a history
Right.
of some
Overturning the cases of Smith versus Jones
Yeah.
and McCormick versus New Hampshire, whatever it is. And that probably would do it. But I would really want the title to make clear, and the description to make clear in the current context. You're absolutely right. Obviously, for political purposes, they have to be mindful of not losing votes and mindful of what's going to sell with the voters of New Hampshire.
Right.
But why are we doing this unless we're really, altering the third party doctrine? What's the exercise for?
Right. So that's one thing I'm doing. And then the second thing that I'm doing
congratulations.
It happened. And congratulations to Josh, and thank you to Josh.
Well, good for you too.
This. No.
You're providing the intellectual foundation, the framework for him to do this. So congratulations. Well done.
Wow. So there's that. And then the other thing is that in this Center for Legalization of Privacy, I'm going to get teary. This is crazy. Cheer up. This is bizarre. Okay. So it's not bizarre, but it's okay. The other thing that I'm trying to do is intervene with this Facebook FTC settlement order that they're trying to just
Facebook settlement.
Yeah. I'm sure that the FTC and maybe Facebook too would like to just rubber stamp this thing, but I have concerns about what that settlement order means for our privacy, again, because of this third party doctrine. And so I have, as the Center for Legalization of Privacy, engaged a local council, somebody really awesome and cool, Statecraft, and they are going to help me put some motions in to at least file an amicus brief and put a set of ideas before the judge to make them reconsider the wisdom of that settlement order. Settlement order, in effect, takes for granted that the third party doctrine is going to still continue to apply to the data that we share with Facebook, that the data that we share with Facebook is not protected by the warrant requirement.
Right.
They can just have this settlement order between Facebook and the FTC, and then suddenly all of our data that we've shared with Facebook is potentially available to the FTC and the DOJ. I find that unacceptable.
Right.
And so, I want to fight that anyway, because I think it's bad that, a substantive outcome for that to happen with our data. But second, it potentially gives me another opportunity to put this theory of resolving the problem before the right.
Yeah. No, I think an amicus or something would be appropriate, some kind of intervention, indicating why there are other interests that are not being looked at in the settlement. The FTC, and the FTC, as we were saying in the previous interview, they've got a broader mandate than merely some civil suit normally would have. The Federal Trade Commission actually should be looking out for, according to their own mandate, should be looking out for a broader range of interests than simply, say, getting the victims whole on the Cambridge Analytica case. They have a broader mandate. So, yeah, if you want help with that amicus brief, I'm happy to help.
That's awesome. And
I've actually done amici for the California Supreme Court. So
okay, no, that's wonderful. It's awesome to have volunteers. And the other thing that I'm going to ask for anybody watching this now, if you want to support my work, because as it stands right now, I am paying this attorney to help me with it out of my own pocket. This DC attorney. I could use help reimbursing some of that at least. And then also if you just want to help support in general, it's going to, because there's another case that's on my radar, you people who want a little bit of help with your, I was going to say you people, like Trump supporters, somehow, is there something that I can do, that would make Trump supporters happy when I'm doing all my privacy stuff, right? The people who always hate me because I criticize Trump. One thing that I'm doing or that I looked at that I maybe would want to get involved in is this demand that's been sent to Apple and I think also Google for the identity information of the users of that app for the scope for guns or whatever.
Right.
All the people who use an app are therefore potential criminals. And
yeah, and the minute you say I want the app on my phone, you're now on the hook. Really?
Yeah. So I think that's ridiculous, but it is, what is it? It's another application of the third party doctrine.
Right. Exactly. Exactly right.
The fact that you share your information with Google or Apple when you get this app or, with those.
You've waived whatever privacy or claims to confidentiality.
Supposedly the government. And this is under the Trump administration, you Trump supporting people. You have no privacy.
Right.
And you have no privacy in whether you download an app having to do with guns, which you supposedly care about. I think this is wrong on principle, and I'm willing to maybe go to bat on that too. So people, if you want to support me getting involved in further things too, I have this Facebook thing. I have a personal interest in trying to preserve the value that is Facebook as well, besides the fact that I want to get my theory before people. But yeah, so go to legalizeprivacy.org. I've got also the links to different ways that you can support me on my blog. My
heroic work, Amy.
Don't let it go. It's not, I mean,
It is.
Okay, I mean, okay.
No, it is. It is. I mean, future generations will thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that future generations have the chance to thank me and we stave off 1984, right?
Right. Hopefully, yeah.
But I've got just this one little baby that I'm going to get out there, and that's.
But it's a precious one.
So can we talk about something that just is not going to stress me out at all, I hope? or stress you out at all? Are you okay? Do we have one more topic in us?
Sure. Yeah, I can keep going.
You feel okay?
Yeah.
Okay. If you feel okay, I feel okay. Let's keep going here. They're going to have a game, Ms. Monopoly.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Ms. Monopoly. So stop. I have a serious question about it for you, but I hope it's one that's not going to get us too agitated, damn it. Okay. So Ms. Monopoly, and the thing that CNN is touting about the Ms. Monopoly game, I mean, the graphics look cute and everything, and it's, it's a fun concept. I used to play Ms. Pac-Man. And I thought Miss Pac-Man was so cute. And I thought it was a definite improvement on Pac-Man. Maybe this was my feminist roots. I would play Ms. Pac-Man. I didn't play regular Pac-Man. I played Ms. Pac-Man. And boy, I was good. I love that game. So it's like, why couldn't they make Ms. Monopoly just cute and awesome? But here's what they did. They decided that as part of Ms. Pac-Man, they needed to give the women $240 every time they pass go, whereas the men would get only $200. So affirmative action in Monopoly.
The board game.
Yes.
Right. Yes, we know that there must be implicit gender discrimination every time people sit down to play a game of Monopoly. We have to correct for that. There's no showing that there's this income gap in Monopoly.
Women can't be that good at Monopoly.
Right. Exactly. I was not aware that there was some kind of 73 cents to the dollar earning gap disparity between men and women when they played Monopoly. I thought everyone, just collecting $200 when you pass go is, I guess not. I guess they have to really adjust for the social and psychological implications of.
I mean, damn, those Ms. Pac-Man machines, they should have had a little camera sensor, like the face recognition stuff that we're all subjected to now.
Right.
And it should have seen that I, a female player, was putting that quarter in the slot to play Ms. Pac-Man, and they should have given me some kind of advantage.
Exactly. It shouldn't be right. It should cost guys the quarter and girls only a dime or something.
Well, there's that, or it just maybe like the guys get the 3, lives that you get, and then the girls get 4.
4, an extra life.
Right.
There you go.
So that's, so we were just, sorry.
That would reflect reality, right? Women have, slightly longer life expectancies than men do. Yeah. So that might reflect reality.
Knock on something. God. I don't want a longer life expectancy. I just want the long one. Okay. I'm sorry. You've just had like health crap. You're just like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's my wood? I'm going to knock on it somewhere.
Right.
So I say, forget that, it's not, I didn't want some special advantage with Ms. Pac-Man.
Right.
I want to show that I was better than the guys on my own merits.
Yeah. It's kind of offensive. When you're in a competition, it's kind of insulting, isn't it? That's the way I'd look at it if I were a woman. I don't need your extra $40. I want to play the same. I want to have the same playing field that the other competitors in this game do, so that if I do win, right, it might actually reflect some skill or determination on my part, as opposed to.
Or let's go into the more controversial, like kind of optional value territory. Maybe it'll reflect the fact that it's so cute aesthetically, like Ms. Pac-Man was, that somehow, I'm so much more motivated to play it, and therefore I become really good at that versus regular Monopoly. Who knows?
Right.
But we don't need that, right? So then here's the question for you, the serious question, because I'm out there saying, hey, why can't we just make it awesome? Ms. Pac-Man was so cute, and couldn't they just make this cute and leave out the affirmative action garbage? And then somebody says, well, Monopoly was never an awesome game anyway. And he says, because it reinforces the idea of a zero-sum game. Do you have a thought on that? Like, is Monopoly a bad game? Have I been sort of subconsciously indoctrinated because I played Monopoly when I was a child?
Well, just think of the name, Monopoly. It implies that real estate holding is sort of a contest between monopolists. Mm-hmm. And there's something to it in terms of the rules of the game, right? The first 2 or 3 times around the board, where you land is absolutely essential. And it's just a built-in, monopolistic zero-sum game that they do have sort of worked into the very basis of the game, which is not realistic, right? The rules of Monopoly do not reflect the actual situation in the world of real estate, do they, in a capitalist society?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense of being able to have more properties than just the one that exists on the board. And then I'm, trying to recall all the rules and everything. Of course, there's this fixed pot of money, but the fixed pot of money isn't necessarily.
That can expand, right? I think the rules say you can make more money, right?
And you can. Okay.
Runs out. It depends. I think that there's 2 different versions of. Now we're getting into the weeds about Monopoly rules, but I think there's 2 different versions. One version says that the bank never runs out of money, and that you can make money out of any paper that you happen to have around.
Okay. Well, that's good. And then, but there are rules about, there's only so many properties reflected. Each is represented by those cards that you get, the deeds or whatever, the deed cards, and you can put only so many houses on each one, or hotels or whatever. There's a limit to that, right? Or no?
Right, there is. In the rules of Monopoly. Well, again, there are different variations of Monopoly, right? People have done their own twists on it, but in the traditional, 4 houses, then you can get the hotel, and right. There's a certain limit and procedure to how you develop each of the properties, and there's a limited number of properties, and their values are sort of fixed. In other words, Boardwalk with a hotel is.
Oh, but you can trade. You can trade with other
yeah.
players too. And you can say, okay, I'll give you Baltic, whatever the world is, and then plus, some hundreds of dollars, and then
Right.
we'll trade.
And normally those trades, though, only happen when someone's got a big rent situation. They fell on, Marvin Gardens with 4 houses.
Yes.
So they need to cut a deal with the landlord at Marvin Gardens,
okay.
right? And they're willing to trade, North
Okay,
Carolina.
so your idea is that maybe by the actual set standard rules of the game, it does reinforce this background zero-sum assumption.
I think it does. I think it does.
And so therefore it's never been awesome, and I shouldn't
Well,
worry
no,
about...
no. I wouldn't condemn. It's a funny thing. It's like having some political disagreement with a actor or a movie or something. That doesn't take away from my ability to enjoy the actor's performance in the movie. I may have a big political disagreement, maybe with the film, maybe with the actor. There still could be some entertaining aspect of the film. And I think that's true of Monopoly. I think there may be some underlying ideological disagreement I have with anyone who would come up with a game called Monopoly, as if monopolies are the way capitalism works, right? I think they're already smuggling in this idea that capitalism is a monopolistic enterprise, and real estate owning is always a monopolistic enterprise. But even given that, have I had fun playing Monopoly? Yes. And so, does that make me some kind of socialist? I don't think so.
I had a lot of fun, but I didn't obviously understand any of those assumptions behind it when I was a kid at all.
Right.
And of course, now I reject them anyway.
Right.
So am I living proof of somebody who wasn't corrupted by playing Monopoly? Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say corrupted. So long as we're aware when we do get smarter and do learn, just know that that's what it is. Still have fun playing Monopoly. No one's going to take that fun away from me playing Monopoly. See, that would be, it's almost like letting them win with their political axe grinding. No, even I can enjoy Monopoly. Ha ha, I win. I wouldn't let the ideology of the filmmaker disturb my enjoyment of the film if there was something, actually artistic or entertaining about the film for the same reason. I wouldn't let them take away that fun from me, maybe. If you have fun playing Monopoly or Miss Pac-Man, no matter what the corrupt ideology, you keep having fun.
God, I don't even want to start analyzing Miss Pac-Man and go in there and I find all these hidden assumptions that were being drilled into me as I, try to eat all the dots.
Right. Right. It's all consumption. It's all gobbling up of stuff.
Maybe we're going to have some show about gaming and things, because there's these popular games out there, and what sort of ideas might be being subliminally communicated to kids and adults.
That's fascinating. Yeah. That's fascinating. Especially with these new video games, right? Because they'll take you through a whole story where you make certain choices and it'll take you down a different path of the storyline. And, stories do come to have themes at the end of the day. How does the conflict get resolved? So, you go through these Westerns, or you go through some of these crime, video games. They'll take you through a whole story, a whole narrative line of what happens, and there's a resolution at the end. And you either win because you're the baddest criminal, or you win because you're the toughest hombre or something, depending on the game. But are there messages that are subtly being put in there? And I think there's got to be.
Yeah.
Intentionally or not.
That could be interesting. And I know a couple people who are in the gaming world, and that could be...
Let's have a guest on for that. Yeah, someone who's game designer.
As for now, I'm going to stay in my ignorance is bliss. Pac-Man is really cute territory. And I'll ask you, do you have any other topic? Because that's all I've got on my skeletal program notes. And we actually have had quite a conversation.
Yeah, we did. I think this was excellent. No, I don't. It was always a wonderful conversation with you, Amy.
So next Tuesday, sir?
Next Tuesday, indeed.
Let's go hang in there, both of us. And
yes.
Hug. I'm sending you a hug over Zoom. Does that sound good?
Zoom hug.
Zoom hug. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.